What's up, everyone? Tera Roberts here with FantasyPros, bringing you my Week 3 waiver wire pickups. It's been a crazy week with injuries that might have left you with some holes to fill in your roster, so let's hit the waivers. Number 10, Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs had a monster game against the Steelers, catching 5 of his 7 targets for 113 yards and a score. That makes 12 targets in 2 games, a fantastic number for someone like Ruggs, who was underutilized last season. The Las Vegas offense runs through Darren Waller, but Henry Ruggs, Bryan Edwards, and Hunter Renfrow are all getting involved, and Ruggs was obviously drafted to be the Raiders' go-to receiver. With Derek Carr looking fantastic and the Raiders putting up points aplenty, there's plenty of room for Waller, Ruggs, and probably others. Do monitor Derek Carr's ankle situation, but Ruggs looks like he has the potential to have season-long value. Number 9, Cordarrelle Patterson. It wasn't Javion Hawkins or Kadri Ellison or even Wayne Gallman that was the threat to Mike Davis. It turned out to be Cordarrelle Patterson. He didn't exactly play a ton of snaps, just 37%, but he was heavily involved when he was in the game. He gained just 7 yards on 11 carries, but he also had 5 catches for 58 yards, and he scored 2 touchdowns. And the best part was, he was used everywhere. In the backfield, out wide, in the slot, in the wildcat, you name it, he was there. You probably can't start him yet despite his 2 touchdown performance, but he seems to be a part of the Atlanta game plan just enough to be warranted as an ad. Number 8, Zach Moss. Moss was inactive in week 1, but this week he played and he scored 2 touchdowns against the Dolphins. He was clearly second fiddle to Devin Singletary, who did look very good again, and Moss got most of his production in garbage time with the Bills way ahead. But Buffalo seems to be a little bit more willing this year to let their running backs get in more work, as opposed to last year. And with the Bills' generally explosive offense opening up running lanes, Moss could be in line for a big role if something were to happen to Singletary. Unless it's a game projected to have a very incredibly positive game script, you should probably not start Moss, but he should be added as a high-end insurance policy at the very least. Number 7, Daniel Jones. Shockingly, Daniel Jones looked really good against Washington on Thursday. Sure, there were some inaccurate throws and poor decisions at times, but as a whole, he moved the ball really well. Not only has Jones yet to throw a pick, he also has 122 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns against 2 very strong defenses. The offense seems to be designed to accentuate his rushing ability, so that should provide him with a safe weekly floor. With Sterling Shepard looking great and Kenny Golladay and Saquon Barkley getting healthy, Jones' ceiling could be enormous. It's not always fun to watch, but as a streaming quarterback, Jones is often going to be a great option. Number 6, Kenneth Gainwell. It wasn't a great day for almost anyone on the Eagles, but Gainwell continued to carve out a role for himself, playing a third of the time and totaling 8 touches against the 49ers. He should likely fall into that 8 to 12 touch range every week, and with Jalen Hurts' rushing ability opening up the lanes for running backs, that's going to be enough to provide valuable production. He also acts as an insurance policy to Miles Sanders and would likely see his role expand if something were to happen to the lead back. Valuable for now, with potential for highly valuable later. That's an ideal bench stash for your fantasy team. Number 5, James White. James White would have been only borderline rosterable with Cam Newton, but he's probably an every week start with Mac Jones. White has 21 touches in 2 games, including 12 receptions. That's not an anomaly. We're seeing the old James White. With the Patriots lacking in explosive playmakers in their receiving game, a rookie quarterback, and a conservative game plan, Jones should continue to target White early and often going forward. Although he scored a touchdown in week 2, fantasy managers shouldn't count on that moving forward, but they don't need to. In PPR leagues, he's a starter, and in all other leagues, at worst, he's a bye-week fill-in. Number 4, J.D. McKissic. We probably can't expect a goal line carry and touchdown every week like we saw against the Giants, but we can probably expect him to be involved in the pass game. Taylor Heinicke looked more than competent against the Giants, and unlike Ryan Fitzpatrick, looks perfectly content to check the ball down to his backs. McKissic doesn't have a ton of value as an insurance policy because if something were to happen to Antonio Gibson, it's doubtful that he'd get a huge run just because of his size, but he is highly valuable in PPR formats and even a flex option in deeper standard leagues, so he should be added off the waiver wire as soon as possible. Number 3, KJ Osborn. Another week, another big game for KJ Osborn, who caught 5 passes for 91 yards and a score against the Cardinals. Osborn is obviously not the first option in the Minnesota offense. You've got Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, and Adam Thielen before we can even think about him. But without Irv Smith, there's a void there for Kirk Cousins, and Osborn is the one who's filling that void. There will probably be some inconsistency, but given how poor Minnesota's defense has looked, there should be plenty of pass attempts to go around. Osborn should be added and at the very least stashed, if not started immediately. Number 2, Rondale Moore. I mentioned Rondale Moore last week after he caught 4 passes for 68 yards while playing just 29 snaps. Well, this week against the Vikings, it was 46 snaps while leading the Cardinals in targets and yards and being tied for the team lead in catches and touchdowns. Moore is explosive with the ball in his hands and fits perfectly into Cliff Kingsbury's offense, and as his role grows, so will his production. He's an immediate add for every fantasy team. Number 1, ZACK PASCAL. PASCAL was overshadowed by Michael Pittman Jr.'s huge game against the Rams, but he still saw 6 targets, catching 5 of them for 38 yards and a score. Carson Wentz is banged up, and Pascal's outlook could take a bit of a hit if Jacob Eason was under center, but for now, there's a ton to like. Pascal played nearly every snap and ran a route on every pass play, and it's clearly him and Pittman as the top 2 options at receiver for the Colts, at least until T.Y. Hilton returns. This isn't league-winning upside play, but it's every week's starter play. With 3 touchdowns in 2 games, Pascal is someone who could slide right into your lineup as a wide receiver 3 every week. That wraps things up for this week's waiver wire pickups. Be sure to follow FantasyPros across all platforms so that you don't miss out on any of our content, and be sure to come back next week for another round of waiver wire pickups.